September 20th, 1928, Bernice Boone was born in New Haven, Kentucky. She was the 12th child of William Joseph and Mary Josephine Greenwell Boone. The family lived in a big house just 1 mile south of New Haven, and Bernice's father was a farmer who supplemented his income with road construction work. Bernice grew up during the years of the Great Depression. The Rolling Fork River served as her family's private swimming pool and skating rink. In the woods behind the river, the family picked wildflowers in the spring, blackberries in the summer, and leaves in the fall. At an early age, Bernice knew she would join the religious life. In 1949, she made her vows and joined the Ursuline Sisters in Maple Mount, Kentucky, taking the name of Sister Joseph Angela Boone, better known as Sister J.A. In 1991, Sister Joseph Angela's great-niece, Diane Meekum, and Diane's husband, Glenn, visited Sister J.A. and toured the Mount St. Joseph campus.
Sister Joseph Angela, how you doing?
We're fine.
Why don't you give us a little intro here, tell us where we are?
Go ahead. This is the Mount St. Joseph guest house, and I'm just telling Diane, it was built in 1898. And we have a picture of this house after it was first built, and there's that tree that you see back there was just a little tiny sprout.
Is that right?
You know the tree is almost 100 years old.
Wow.
We call it our gossip tree simply because of the fact that everybody sits under it. You know, you can imagine what goes on under a tree when all the sisters come in from all the various places. This is we have 7 bedrooms in this house, so all of our visitors who come stay here. Mount St. Joseph was established in 1874. This was built in 1898.
Okay, not in 1874, and we are just southwest of Owensboro, Kentucky.
Southwest of Owensboro, right. See, the Louisville Ursulines are city cousins. We always call them our city cousins. There were 5 of them who came down in 1874 on August the 5th to make their, just to start a school here. So they stayed and founded a community, and we've been here ever since. We're getting growing and growing and growing.
In 2016, Sister J.A.'s nephew and great-niece, Michael Boone, aka Mickey Boone, and Ann Boone Paris, visited her at the Mount. They spent the afternoon reminiscing about Sister J.A.'s childhood in New Haven and life as an Ursuline sister.
You probably have a picture. There's all of us, your dad, and Alois and Regina, all lined up, and you single file from the oldest to the youngest.
You had a wonderful childhood. What was it like growing up with Joe Bill?
Well, he was one of those guys that, knew how to do everything. I mean, he was a farmer, and he teased a lot, and really caused a lot of problems with us girls, because he was a boy, and the rest of us around in that age were girls. We didn't have any boys to be mean to us other than Joe Bill. And we really just had a lot of fun with Joe Bill. But other than whatever else he did, he had a speech impediment. So he stopped going to school probably when he was in the 5th or 6th grade. So he was been a farmer from the time he was, however old he was at that time, till the time he married and moved to New Haven, or lived in New Haven. He had a bedroom upstairs, and we had no heat upstairs, except in that one room where there was a thing in the floor, and the stove was registered. The stove was underneath of it on the first floor. He would give us supposedly, I'll give you a quarter if you go warm my bed up, which meant we had to go crawl in his bed and stay there until he was ready to get in. But I don't remember ever getting that money. Your dad was already gone. He had already married. And you all were his playmates, really, you and Joe, because he was 10 or 12 years old when you all were kids growing up.
You have always had the nickname of Beans. How did that originate?
And that's Joe Bill's fault. He couldn't say my name. He called me Beans.
Okay.
I mean, it was, and some of the teachers at St. Catherine's, knew that was my nickname. So when I got to the convent, every once in a while, somebody across the dining room would, Beans. I think, oh my God.
What was your favorite toy as a child?
Listen, have you heard about that doll that Jeannie had on her bed? It was a beautiful doll, big floral skirt around it, and she put it in the bed, on the pillows, and it was all spread out. It was absolutely adorable. And I remember I wanted to play with that doll, and she wouldn't let me because it was too elegant to be played with. It was to be looked at but not played with. And I remember one day I was in the crib. They kept trying to wake me up. I was awake, but I didn't open my eyes. Finally, Jeannie said, "I'll let you play with my doll." Well, that got me out of there.
What is your most vivid childhood memory?
You remember Arthur Grima?
Now, Arthur Grima was Mama's
nephew.
nephew.
He came and stayed a lot at our house. And Daddy would take, had a great big axe out in the backyard. And there'd be logs yay big, and he'd pick up a log and split it. And I was going to be a good girl, and help Daddy out chop some wood. Here I was, just 5 years old, and I picked up that axe to chop some wood. And the log was on the thing, and Arthur came by and said, "Better put that down, you'll get in trouble." It made me mad. I thought, who in the heck is this guy, thinking he can tell me what to do? So I picked up that axe and went down that log. Well, the axe went right on my foot. And I've got a scar that long to still show you that that actually happened.
Tell us about the time you had planned to spend the week with Mickey and Joe.
I told you about his going off and leaving me at your house on a Monday. And I got so homesick. On Wednesday morning, I had Eddie to ride with me down to the train station in the dark, in winter. This was in the winter months, so that I could get back to New Haven. I got to New Haven, and I called at home, and they said, "He's gone to Louisville to pick up beans." I think I was probably in the 8th grade.
Where did you attend high school?
St. Catherine's, all 4 years.
Your father attended high school at Gethsemane. What was the story behind that?
Well, see, there wasn't any high school in New Haven at that time. And the Trappists were brand new up at Gethsemane. And that was the only school they could go to. And I think my grandfather Boone somehow or other had been to Gethsemane, and he saw the school there. Anyway, he went to high school there. And
That's Papa, your dad.
uh-huh. And that school burned before he graduated. And the Trappists said, that's not our vocation to teach school. So they never rebuilt.
Tell us about your parents. Were they strict?
Oh, my mother wasn't strict at all. My dad was. And we had this little thing going. I wasn't one of them, but Eddie was. She would go riding out with the boys, and as they would, go back and forth wherever they went. And if they got back, if they'd been to Louisville or if they'd been to Bardstown or wherever, and they got back home, instead of coming home, they would drive by, and they would blow the horn, and my mother would catch on that they're back and they're safe. Well, Dad was always very stewing and wondering, why don't they come on home? It's getting dark, and all that. And my mother would know that they were home and safe, but she couldn't say that they're there because they blew the horn as they went by.
Growing up on a family farm, did you work on the farm?
The only time I remember ever working on the farm was a particular day they were baling hay. And you remember those bales, about 90 or 100-pound bale.
Like it.
Well, they were heavy, took 2 of us to lift one. Well, he wanted some help in putting them, after they were baled, on a trailer. So my mother said, you can do it this one time, but you're not going to do it twice.
Did you have chores as a child?
This is where my mother was very considerate. We always tried to go to Mass most every day, and coming home, we would say what we wanted to do, either wash dishes, dry dishes, or sweep the floor. And you got to do whichever one you yelled for first.
Oh, yeah. With such a large family, did your family can fruits and vegetables?
We canned a lot. In the summertime you canned. And I remember one particular day we had more to can than we had time to can in the morning. So we canned in the afternoon. And my mother said, "I'm so sorry. This is your swimming time. I'm sorry that, you don't get to go swimming, right away." And I thought, well, you're still working. You know, we need to keep on working. But for her to apologize to us kids that we didn't get to go swimming, because we'd always go at 1 o'clock and it would be 3:30 or 4 before we'd get out.
What was it like to have the Rolling Fork River as your private swimming pool?
You know, all the time we swam. We had the Rolling Fork River right across the road from our house. Friends from New Haven would come out and go swimming with us. And my mother would fix up something, either hot chocolate or toast or bread or whatever. And, you know, that was our dessert. And then come out of the river and play a game on the front yard. And there was one time somebody stopped and wanted to know what orphanage that was.
Tell us about going to Louisville with your father.
He said, if you see him put the tea kettle on to get hot water, you know he's going to shave. So if he's going to shave, he's going to go someplace. You're going to Louisville today, Dad? Can we go with you? Sure, be ready. And man, when he was ready to go, you'd better be ready. So we'd go and he'd drop us off right there at the corner where the St. Joe Hospital was. I've forgotten the street address there.
Eastern Parkway.
Eastern Parkway and
Preston Highway.
Preston Highway, right. He would drop us off. And we'd go running around doing, you know, whatever. And every once in a while there'd be a movie and, you know, we would go see. And lo and behold, several times while we were at those movies, Daddy would be there.
Where did your family shop for clothes?
Go to Louisville.
Louisville.
Or Barchtown was the next biggest, you know, whatever. But my mother made, you know, most of our clothes.
She
It was always hand-me-downs.
Sure. Well, for you, because you were one of the younger
Yeah,
ones.
I was number 12.
Yeah.
What was dating like in New Haven?
I remember going to some kind of a famous dance, and I went with Stanley Woods.
Yeah.
And it was cold, man, it was cold. And of course, you know, you didn't have fancy coats to wear, so you just barely were clothed warm to keep yourself warm.
Sure.
And that had a flat tire, and it was late, and I thought we'd never warm up enough to get when we got home. It was getting out of bed the next morning, and I was still cold.
Bernice entered the Mount St. Joseph Novitiate on September 7, 1946, at the age of 17. 3 years later, on August 15, 1949, she made her final vows and became Sister Joseph Angela, a member of the Ursuline Sisters of Mount St. Joseph in Maple Mount, Kentucky. When did you know you wanted to enter the religious life?
When I was 6 years old, I always went to the convent. Margie was there. Regina graduated from high school. She went to the convent. And somebody said to my mother, "Is every other one of your girls going to go to the convent?" She said it would make me very, very happy if they did. So I remember hearing her say that. So when I was always thinking, I'm going to be a nun. And I would go down that every other one until it got to Jeannie, and she didn't go. Then Eddie didn't go. So Josephine didn't go. So it left me free to go. Alois was 13 years older than I am. Regina was 10 years older. So when I went to the convent, they both were at St. Columba teaching school. Of course, I was always known as their sister, little sister, younger sister.
How did you choose the name Sister Joseph Angela?
Was you were to change your name. And so you put in your three options. And you didn't know until investment day when the bishop was there what your name was going to be. And I wanted Josephine because of my mother was Josephine, and my dad was Joseph. And I thought, well, Angela was our founder. So anyway, I got it. So I was really surprised.
What was it like for your family when you left for the convent?
In that 1 year, Eddie had gone into nurses training. Jeannie got married, Celie got married. I came to the convent, so all of us were brought out of the house almost within a year's time.
Were you able to visit your family after joining the religious life?
When we once entered the community here, that was our life. We were you just didn't go home. That got changed sometime after Vatican II, that we were able to visit parents in their home. The rule was we could visit them if they were sick and dying. I did stop by the hospital to visit her, but that didn't count as going home. You know, the home meant going to the house where she lived.
Sure.
Tell us a story about a special letter you received from your father.
At some point, he went up to Gethsemane to make a retreat, and he wrote this letter. It came to the school where I was teaching, and the principal thought, that is something very, very important. So she brings it to the classroom while I was teaching 7th graders. And I remember reading that letter, and he said, I haven't entered the community, I just came to make a retreat.
From 1949 through 1961, Sister Joseph Angela taught elementary school at St. Joseph's and Paul's School in Owensboro and St. Denis School in Louisville. She earned her undergraduate degree from Brescia College in Owensboro and her master's degree in math with a minor in physics at the Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C. Sister J.A. served as a math professor and Dean of Women at Brescia from 1963 through 1970. From 1970 through 1989, she served as finance director for the Ursuline Sisters, and during that time she served on the Ursuline Sisters Leadership Council. From 1989 until 2011, she served as counselor and director of administration for the Diocese of Owensboro and became their consultant of finance and administration from 2011 until her retirement in 2014. Tell us about your role in bringing computers to the Mount.
I can tell you the story about computers. After I got out of Catholic U with my degree and master's in math, and I was teaching math there at Brescia. And this guy, had him in my math class. He was really I thought, very smart. But then he graduated and became the representative of IBM in Dallas, Texas. I said to him one day, Jerry, I think we need to get, the computer at the Mount, because I'd been teaching math at Brescia and knew what IBM language was, with cards and all that kind of stuff. You did cards with holes punched in them. Anyway, when you start seeing that there is that advantage in the real world of a computer, I said to Jerry, since you're involved in this company, what would you recommend that we would get for here at the Mount? He said, don't do anything. I'm coming up in March and I'll bring you something. So he had the Cobalt language instead of the IBM language on the program in the first one we got. Well, you started putting in all the members of the community, and my assistant at that time got her master's in computer science. So she set up a program for payroll. So here we started doing checks on the payroll with computer. So I called Jerry again, and I said, we need to come up with at least 5 computers. He said, come on down to Dallas and we'll get them for you. So we left on a Saturday and spent the night in Little Rock, got to Dallas, and spent the night in an Ursuline convent. He picked us up on Monday morning. We worked our coattails off, translating our Cobalt language into IBM language, wiring of the computer and all that kind of stuff. So my assistant was the one that learned the language, and I was the one that had to learn how to wire the building.
How did your visit to the Little Sisters of the Poor influence you?
So anyway, at the Little Sisters of the Poor, I guess they didn't expect us to be spending the night, but they put me in the laundry. And it was a real nice laundry. I mean, they had cots in there, and I nosed around. I found there were some statues of St. Joseph, and anyway, I raised this one statue up, and a little note under it said, we need $200 by such and such a date. The Little Sisters of the Poor were needing money to pay their bills. So I started looking under statues, and there was always a little note for something that they wanted, under that. So when I got the job of finance director here at the Mount, I had a statue of St. Joseph, and I put all my problems in a note under, under that statue.
What was it like to be financial director of a 500-person corporation without having a background in financial management?
Yeah, that you learned it on the spot. At the time when I was asked to do the job, I was teaching math at Brescia. I just began to start budgeting and start being careful with money, and we were just beginning to say that we could drive, and one of the biggest bills I had to pay was for 10 automobiles. You do everything, maintenance and hiring the employees and supervising the farm managers, and it was more of that than it was finances. At that time, we had just a few employees, and they were being paid in cash. And I thought I was smart enough to know that you needed to take out FICA, federal income tax, you know, for that. So I started doing payroll with checks.
What was your first experience with bonds?
We had a lockbox at a bank, and I went to that lockbox, and there were some bonds in it. You know, the coupons on them. Some of them had not been collected for several years. So I cut them off, and I said to somebody, "What do you do with those things when they come due?" "Oh, just put them in the trash." I thought, doesn't make sense. So I went to the library and got a book out on bonds. And anyway, it was over $2,000 in coupons when I finally took them to the bank. I saved the community a lot of money by doing that.
After serving as finance director for the Mount, you went to the Archdiocese of Owensboro. What was your role there?
Well, I was finance director basically, and it was just handling the finances, investments, and that type of thing there at the diocese.
Sister Joseph Angela is known for her smile and the dry Boone wit. She has always embodied Christian stewardship, protection of God's gift of creation, and the use of God's gifts for the greater glory of God. Sister Joseph Angela is a former trustee of Brusha University and is a recipient of the university's Distinguished Alumna Award. In 2014, a new lodge at the Gasper River Catholic Youth Camp and Retreat Center dedicated Boone Lodge in honor of the work Sister J.A. had done for the Archdiocese of Owensboro and as co-founder of the camp. Sister J.A.'s keen business sense, her ability to look for savings throughout the diocese, and her deep faith all contributed to the diocese having the resources available to go forward with this purchase of the camp property. Remembering Sister J.A. followed her two biological sisters into the community of the Ursuline Sisters, we know the community bond and the bond of sisterhood followed the three Boone sisters of Maple Mount. Sister Regina entered eternal life on April 29, 2010, just a few hours before the anniversary of the death of Sister Aloise. Sister Joseph Angela has lived 70-plus years of religious life, and a prayer written by Sister Regina is reflective of Sister J.A.'s continued devotion. Dear Lord, help me to entrust an unknown future to a known God. Keep me able to smile and enjoy all your beauty at Mount St. Joseph. Accept all my aches and pains as a small return for all your gifts to me. Amen.